Marcus and Angela had always dreamed of a quiet life together. After years of moving from one place to another due to Marcus's military career, they finally found a neighborhood that seemed perfect. It was a small community of well-kept homes, tree-lined streets, and neighbors who waved politely when they passed by. Angela especially loved the community garden and the little park nearby where children played in the evenings. For her, it felt like the kind of place she had imagined raising a family, a place where peace was possible. For Marcus, peace had been a long time coming. After serving for decades in the Navy, including difficult deployments overseas, he was ready for something different. He wanted mornings where the loudest sound was birds singing outside the window instead of helicopters or sirens. He wanted evenings where he could sit on the porch with his wife, drinking sweet tea, instead of rushing through quick meals while waiting for the next call of duty. Moving into this neighborhood symbolized a new chapter in his life. At first, everything seemed just right. The couple kept to themselves, but Angela's warm personality soon made her familiar to a few neighbors. She would smile when walking to the mailbox, offer a kind word to delivery drivers, and sometimes bake small treats for families around her. Marcus, quieter and more reserved, was often seen trimming the hedges or fixing small things around the house. The two of them weren't looking for attention, they just wanted to live peacefully. However, behind the polite smiles and neatly trimmed lawns, the community wasn't as perfect as it appeared. The neighborhood was run by a homeowners association, or HOA, a group of residents responsible for making rules and enforcing them. In theory, the HOA was meant to keep the neighborhood beautiful and organized, but in practice, it often became a source of tension. Some of the enforcers took their authority far too seriously, looking for the smallest reasons to issue warnings or fines. Marcus had heard about this before they moved in, but Angela brushed it off. "How bad could it be?" she said with a laugh. "We follow rules. We keep things neat. I don't think we'll have any trouble." And for the first few weeks, it seemed like she was right. They received the official welcome packet, a long list of rules about paint colors, lawn maintenance, and even the type of mailboxes allowed. They read through it carefully and made sure their home matched the requirements. Life settled into a routine. Every morning, Angela spent some time in the small garden she planted in the front yard. She loved flowers, roses, daisies, and a few herbs she could use in her cooking. It gave her joy to see something grow, and she often hummed softly as she worked. Marcus enjoyed watching her from the porch. To him, the sight of Angela smiling with her hands in the soil was more healing than any medicine. But while Marcus saw beauty, not everyone did. A few HOA enforcers drove around the neighborhood regularly, scanning for violations. One of them, a man named Rick, had a reputation for being overly strict. He often took pictures of people's yards, wrote down notes, and sent warning letters for things as small as grass growing too high or trash bins left out too long. Rick and a couple of his associates believed they had the power to shape the community exactly as they wanted it, and they didn't like when people stood out even in small ways. Angela's garden caught their eye. To most neighbors, it was charming and cheerful, but to the HOA enforcers, it didn't fit their uniform look of trimmed grass and minimal decoration. Instead of appreciating the color and life it brought to the street, they saw it as a challenge to their rules. At first, Angela received a polite note asking her to reduce the number of plants in the front yard. She showed it to Marcus, who frowned but didn't say much. "Maybe we can move some of them to the back," he suggested. Angela, not wanting conflict, agreed. She worked for hours shifting pots and flowers, making sure the front still looked neat but less full. She hoped that would satisfy the HOA. But the notes kept coming. Another letter complained about the small decorative stones she had arranged around the garden bed. Another one mentioned the height of a trellis she used for her climbing roses. Angela began to feel as though no matter what she did, it would never be enough. Marcus noticed the frustration in her eyes, but he reminded her that staying calm was best. We've faced bigger battles than this, he told her gently. Angela nodded, but deep down she was unsettled. Gardening was her way of finding peace. It reminded her of her mother, who had taught her how to plant seeds and care for them. Every flower had meaning to her, and taking them away felt like losing a piece of herself. Still, she tried to compromise, believing that the enforcers would eventually leave her alone. Unfortunately, things didn't get better. One afternoon, while Marcus was inside reading, Angela was outside tending to the roses. She wore her wide straw hat and gloves, humming as she carefully pruned the branches. The sun was warm, and the street was quiet until a dark SUV pulled up in front of their home. Out stepped Rick and two other HOA enforcers, clipboards in hand. Angela straightened up, brushing dirt from her gloves, and greeted them with her usual politeness. "Good afternoon," she said with a smile, though she felt nervous. Rick didn't smile back. He pointed to her garden and began speaking in a firm, almost scolding tone. "We've told you before, this yard doesn't meet community guidelines. You can't keep ignoring the notices." His voice carried a sharp edge, the kind that made Angela's heart beat faster. Angela tried to explain. "I've already moved many of the plants to the backyard. I thought I was following the rules. Everything is neat and well kept." But the men shook their heads, scribbling notes on their clipboards. "That's not enough," one of them said flatly. "You're still not in compliance." Angela felt a wave of frustration, but she kept her voice calm. "With all respect, I don't think flowers should be a problem. They're not hurting anyone. They make the street more beautiful." Her words didn't soften them. In fact, they seemed to grow more rigid, as if her reasoning was a personal challenge to their authority. The quiet street suddenly felt tense. Neighbors peeked from their windows, curious about what was happening. Angela stood her ground, determined to remain respectful, but the air was heavy with unspoken conflict. Inside the house, Marcus closed his book as faint voices reached his ears. He recognized Angela's tone. It was calm, but he could hear the strain in it. His instincts, sharpened from years of service, told him something wasn't right. He rose slowly, walking to the window. From there, he saw the scene unfolding, his wife standing in her garden, three men in front of her, clipboards in hand, their body language tense. Marcus's eyes narrowed. He didn't rush outside just yet. Instead, he stood quietly for a moment, assessing. He had learned long ago that the first step to handling any situation was to observe. But in his heart, one thing was already clear: his peaceful life might be facing its first real test. Angela felt her hands tremble slightly as she listened to the HOA enforcers' sharp words. Their tone had changed from merely strict to openly hostile, and she realized that no matter how calm she remained, they were determined to intimidate her. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that she had always tried to solve problems with kindness and patience. But as she looked at the three men standing in her front yard, clipboard in hand, she felt a creeping sense of unease. "Please," she said softly, trying to keep her voice steady, "I've done everything you asked. I moved the plants, trimmed the trellis, and even rearranged the decorative stones. I'm trying to follow the rules." One of the enforcers, a tall man with a stern face, shook his head. "That's not enough. You're still out of compliance. You need to fix it now, or we'll have to take further action." Angela felt her stomach twist with worry. "Further action?" she asked cautiously, hoping for clarification. "What does that mean?" Rick, the man she had first dealt with, stepped forward. His expression was hard and unyielding. "It means we'll have to involve the HOA board. You may face fines, and if you don't comply, we could take legal measures. This is your final warning." Angela's voice softened, pleading with them. "I really don't understand. I'm just trying to make my home look nice. These flowers aren't hurting anyone, and I'm following the rules as best I can. Can't we just talk about this instead of making it a big problem? Her words seemed to irritate them further. The tallest enforcer stepped closer, his shadow stretching over her garden. Angela instinctively stepped back, clutching her gloves, her heart racing. She felt trapped, surrounded by men whose patience had clearly run out. Inside the house, Marcus had already sensed the tension rising. He had watched quietly from the window, studying the men's body language. Years of training had taught him to remain calm in the face of aggression, and he knew when a situation was escalating beyond ordinary words. He could see the fear in Angela's eyes, a fear he was determined to replace with safety. He put down the curtain and walked toward the front door. He didn't rush, didn't yell, he just opened the door and stepped outside. His presence was calm but firm, the kind of presence that commands attention without needing to raise a voice. The enforcers turned toward him, surprised by his sudden appearance. Marcus took a deep breath. "Hello, gentlemen," he said evenly. "What's going on here?" Angela's relief was immediate, though she tried not to show it too clearly. Seeing Marcus standing there, calm and in control, gave her a sense of safety she hadn't felt in minutes. She knew he would protect her, but she also knew he wanted to handle the situation without unnecessary confrontation. Rick's expression shifted slightly. "This is none of your business. She's in violation of the community rules. We're just enforcing them." Marcus nodded slowly. "I understand you're enforcing rules, but I also see my wife is being treated unfairly. I'd like us to handle this respectfully, without escalating things." For a moment, there was silence. The enforcers glanced at each other, sensing that Marcus was not just another neighbor. There was a quiet strength in the way he spoke, a calm authority that made them hesitate. Marcus had spent years in high-pressure situations where clear thinking and patience were key. He had learned to assess risks, to understand human behavior, and to take control without creating chaos. Even now, he could sense the tension in their bodies, the irritation behind their words, and he knew exactly how to defuse it, at least for the moment. Angela took a small step closer to him, feeling safer with his presence. "Marcus," she whispered, "please don't make it worse." He nodded, understanding. "I won't. Just stay calm, Angela." Rick cleared his throat. "We just need her to comply. It's not personal. These are the rules for everyone." Marcus tilted his head slightly, keeping his tone calm but firm. "I get that rules are important. But rules are meant to protect the community, not to make someone feel threatened or unsafe. She's doing her best to follow them, and I think it's possible for us to find a solution without conflict." For a moment, it seemed like reason might prevail. The enforcers exchanged uneasy glances, unsure how to respond to a man who spoke with such quiet authority. Marcus continued to stand there, observing their reactions, projecting calm while subtly asserting control over the situation. But tension doesn't disappear quickly. One of the men muttered something under his breath, clearly frustrated. Rick stepped forward again, his voice sharper this time. "We've explained this before. She's not complying. You can't protect her from the rules." Marcus didn't raise his voice, didn't move aggressively. Instead, he simply took a step closer, his eyes steady. "I'm not trying to protect her from rules. I'm trying to protect her from being treated unfairly. You have a responsibility to enforce the community standards, yes, but you also have a responsibility to treat people with respect. That's what I'm asking for." Angela could feel the tension in the air, a heavy weight that seemed ready to break at any moment. She saw the enforcers hesitate, realizing that Marcus was not the kind of man they could intimidate. And yet, she also knew that the men were determined, and that words alone might not end this confrontation. The tallest enforcer shifted his weight uncomfortably. "Look," he said finally, "we just want her to follow the rules. That's all." Marcus nodded once. I understand. And she's doing her best. But if you continue to approach her this way, with shouting or threats, it's not going to help anyone. We can find a better solution if we talk calmly instead of escalating. For a long moment, no one spoke. The quiet hum of the neighborhood seemed louder than ever. A few neighbors peeked out of their windows, curious about the commotion. Marcus kept his eyes on the men, calm but alert, ready to step in further if needed. Angela took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of fear and relief. She could feel Marcus's presence anchoring her, giving her courage she hadn't realized she still had. She whispered a quiet thank you to him, and he gave a small nod in response. Rick and his associates finally stepped back, muttering among themselves. It was clear they were frustrated, unsure of how to handle someone like Marcus. He didn't make threats, didn't raise his voice, but his calm confidence made them reconsider their approach. Angela looked around, seeing the small garden she had worked so hard to maintain. For a moment, she worried that all of this effort would be in vain. But then she saw Marcus standing there, steady and reassuring, and she felt a renewed sense of hope. Maybe they could find a way to live peacefully in this neighborhood after all. Inside, Marcus was already thinking ahead. He knew that this confrontation wasn't the end. There would likely be letters, warnings, and more attempts to enforce arbitrary rules. But he also knew that he had the experience, the patience, and the clarity to handle it. He had faced far greater challenges in the past, and while this wasn't a battlefield, it was still a test of strategy, calm, and strength. As the HOA enforcers finally got back into their SUV and drove away, Angela let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She turned to Marcus, her eyes shining with gratitude and lingering fear. "Thank you," she whispered. Marcus smiled gently. "I've got you. Always." They went back inside together, closing the door to the outside world. The street was quiet again, but the tension lingered. Angela knew that this was only the beginning of their challenges in this neighborhood, but for now, she was safe. And with Marcus by her side, she knew they could face whatever came next together. After the HOA enforcers left, the quiet that returned to the street felt almost fragile. Marcus and Angela sat together in their living room, each lost in thought. Angela tried to focus on the comforting sound of the wind rustling through the trees outside, but her mind kept replaying the confrontation. She had always considered herself calm and patient, yet today she had felt fear creeping in, fear that someone would cross the line and hurt her. Marcus noticed the tension in her shoulders and reached over to take her hand. "Angela," he said softly, "I know that wasn't easy. But we handled it the right way. You stayed calm, and I stayed calm. That's how we get through situations like this together." Angela nodded, squeezing his hand. "I know. I never expected something like this in a quiet neighborhood. I thought moving here would be peaceful." Marcus gave a small, reassuring smile. "Sometimes, even the quietest places have hidden challenges. The important thing is that we're prepared and we face them together. And right now, we're safe." But even as he spoke, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this incident was only the beginning. He had spent years in environments where danger could appear suddenly, and his instincts told him to stay alert. He began to think strategically, planning for what might happen next. The HOA enforcers might return, or they might escalate things further. He needed to be ready for any scenario, but he also knew that he had to handle it carefully to avoid unnecessary conflict. The next few days were tense. Marcus kept a watchful eye on the neighborhood, noting the comings and goings of neighbors and the occasional presence of HOA vehicles. Angela tried to maintain her usual routine, tending to her garden and humming quietly to herself, but she could sense Marcus's vigilance, and it reminded her that they had stepped into a subtle but real struggle. One morning, a letter arrived in their mailbox. Angela opened it with a mix of hope and dread. The letter was from the HOA, written in formal language, stating that another complaint had been filed about her garden. It mentioned that if the issue was not resolved immediately, fines could be applied. Angela felt her chest tighten. She looked at Marcus, her eyes wide with frustration and worry. Marcus read the letter carefully, his expression calm but focused. "They're trying to intimidate us," he said simply. "But letters alone won't scare us. We just need to respond the right way." Angela leaned against him, trying to calm her nerves. "I'm scared, Marcus. What if they keep harassing us?" He hugged her tightly. "We'll handle it. We've faced tougher situations than this. We just need to stay smart and patient. They want a reaction, and we won't give them one. We'll handle this carefully, without letting them control us with fear." Over the next week, Marcus took careful steps. He documented everything: the letters, the notices, the times the enforcers visited, and made sure every detail was recorded. He also researched the HOA's rules, cross-checking them with state laws to ensure they were acting within their rights. He wanted to be fully prepared in case the situation escalated further. Angela noticed the change in Marcus. He was calm, focused, and deliberate in every action. He was no longer just a supportive husband, he was a strategist, carefully planning how to protect both their home and her peace of mind. She felt a mixture of admiration and relief, knowing that he was ready to handle whatever might come next. Despite the tension, life continued. Angela's garden flourished under her care, and she found small moments of joy in the simple act of tending to her plants. Marcus would occasionally step outside with her, quietly pruning a branch or moving a pot. They shared smiles and laughter during these moments, finding comfort in the routine of their daily life. But the peace was fragile. One afternoon, the same SUV that had brought the HOA enforcers before pulled up near their house. Angela froze, her hands gripping her gardening gloves tightly. Marcus noticed her fear immediately. He stepped in front of her, his stance calm but assertive. The men got out, clipboards in hand, but this time, they seemed more cautious, as if they remembered the last encounter. "Good afternoon," Marcus said evenly, his voice calm and steady. "How can I help you today?" Rick's expression was tight. "We're here to check if your yard is in compliance. We received another complaint." Marcus nodded slowly. "I understand. Let's take a look together. I want to make sure everything is correct and clear up any misunderstanding." The enforcers glanced at each other, unsure how to respond. Marcus's calm demeanor made it difficult for them to act aggressively, and Angela felt a sense of relief wash over her. She realized that Marcus's presence was more than protection, it was a shield of confidence that kept the situation from escalating. As they walked around the garden, Marcus pointed out the areas that had been adjusted according to the HOA's previous letters. These plants were moved to the backyard, the stones were rearranged, and the trellis is within the height limit, he explained calmly. Rick flipped through his clipboard, clearly irritated but unsure how to respond. "Yes, but there's still some concern about the spacing of the plants," he muttered. Marcus kept his tone even. "Spacing is a matter of aesthetics, not a violation. We've followed all the rules as written. If there's still an issue, perhaps we can address it in a formal meeting with the HOA board." The enforcers hesitated. Marcus's calm, methodical approach made them second-guess their aggressive tactics. They muttered among themselves, realizing that this wasn't going to be an easy confrontation. Angela watched, amazed at how composed Marcus remained. He wasn't threatening anyone, he was simply standing firm in logic and fairness. After what felt like an eternity, the enforcers finally retreated to their vehicle. Angela let out a long breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "That was close," she whispered. Marcus smiled reassuringly. "We handled it calmly and carefully. That's how we get through situations like this. They can't intimidate us if we don't let them." Over the following weeks, Marcus continued to monitor the situation, documenting every interaction and keeping Angela informed. He also began reaching out to neighbors, discreetly asking if they had experienced similar issues with the HOA. To his surprise, several neighbors admitted that they had felt the enforcers were overly strict, but they hadn't spoken up for fear of retaliation. This gave Marcus an idea. He realized that the problem wasn't just personal, it was systemic. The HOA enforcers had created a culture of fear, where people were afraid to maintain their homes as they saw fit. Marcus knew that addressing this problem would require more than patience. It would require strategy, community awareness, and a firm but respectful stand. Angela continued to tend her garden, finding small moments of peace despite the ongoing tension. She began writing a journal, documenting the daily challenges and victories, finding strength in putting her thoughts into words. Marcus would sometimes sit beside her, offering quiet encouragement and sharing his observations from his own careful monitoring of the neighborhood. Together, they were creating a system of calm resistance, proving that fairness and patience could withstand intimidation. As the days passed, Angela and Marcus grew closer, their bond strengthened by the challenges they faced. They realized that even in a seemingly perfect neighborhood, obstacles could arise, but with patience, strategy, and mutual support, they could navigate the difficulties together. By the end of part 3, a quiet determination settled over them. Angela's garden continued to bloom, a symbol of resilience and beauty. Marcus's calm strength served as a protective anchor, keeping both their home and heart safe. And though the HOA enforcers might try again, the couple was prepared not with aggression, but with patience, intelligence, and unwavering unity. The following week brought an uneasy tension to the neighborhood. Marcus and Angela continued their daily routines, but a sense of vigilance had become a quiet part of their lives. Each morning, Angela tended to her garden with careful hands, her fingers tracing the edges of the flowers she loved. She hummed softly, trying to bring some normalcy to the situation. Marcus, meanwhile, walked the perimeter of their property, subtly checking the street, noting the comings and goings of neighbors and the occasional HOA vehicle. Though nothing aggressive had happened yet, both of them understood that the situation could escalate at any moment. Angela felt a mixture of frustration and exhaustion. She loved her garden, it was her sanctuary, but now every plant seemed to carry a weight she hadn't expected. She remembered her mother teaching her how to care for plants, how to nurture something fragile into life. She had never imagined that this simple act of gardening could become a source of stress and conflict. Yet, she refused to give up. With Marcus by her side, she felt a sense of strength she hadn't known before. One afternoon, as Angela was pruning a rose bush near the front of the house, she noticed a familiar SUV slowly approaching down the street. Her heart sank. She quickly looked toward Marcus, who had been inside checking some documents. He saw the vehicle as well and immediately understood the situation. The SUV slowed, and the 3 HOA enforcers stepped out once again, clipboards in hand. Their faces were more serious this time, and there was an unmistakable sense of determination in their stance. Angela's hands trembled slightly, but she tried to keep her composure. Marcus walked out to meet the enforcers, his presence calm but authoritative. He didn't raise his voice, didn't make threatening gestures, but there was a quiet intensity in his gaze that immediately made the enforcers pause. They had encountered him before, and though they had underestimated him at first, it was clear that he was not someone to push lightly. "Good afternoon," Marcus said evenly. "How can we resolve this today?" Rick stepped forward, his voice sharp. "We received another complaint about your yard. You've been warned repeatedly, and we need to see immediate compliance." Marcus nodded slowly, maintaining his calm tone. "I understand that you have rules to enforce. Angela has made every effort to comply with them. Perhaps we can go over any specific concerns together, calmly, so that we can resolve them without escalating the situation." Angela watched as Marcus carefully guided the conversation. He was firm but respectful, asserting their position without anger or aggression. She felt a growing sense of pride and relief. His presence was not just protective, it was strategic. He was ensuring that the situation remained under control while subtly reminding the enforcers that they could not intimidate them. The tallest enforcer, clearly frustrated, pointed at the spacing between the plants. This still doesn't meet the community standards. The spacing is inconsistent, and it affects the appearance of the neighborhood. Marcus listened attentively, nodding as he examined the garden. Spacing may be a matter of personal preference, but it does not violate any written rules. The garden is well maintained, and there are no hazards or safety issues. I believe it meets the standards for a pleasant and safe environment. Rick exchanged glances with his colleagues, realizing that Marcus had done his homework. The calm, informed way in which he spoke left little room for argument. Angela could see the subtle shift in their body language. They were no longer just enforcing rules, they were trying to figure out how to assert authority without causing a scene. But the tension did not fully dissipate. One of the enforcers muttered under his breath, clearly irritated. Rick stepped forward, his tone harder. "We are just doing our job. You can't protect her from the rules. If this isn't fixed, fines will be applied." Marcus remained composed, his eyes steady. "I understand your role, and I respect your responsibility to enforce community rules. But fairness and respect are also part of that responsibility. Threats and intimidation do not serve anyone here. I am confident we can resolve this with patience and understanding rather than conflict." The enforcers hesitated, realizing that Marcus's calm authority was more powerful than any raised voice or stern warning. Angela felt a surge of relief. For the first time, she felt that they might be able to navigate this challenge without the confrontation escalating further. Suddenly, one of the enforcers stepped closer, his tone sharper than before. "You don't understand. We are authorized to take action if compliance is not immediate. We can issue fines or involve legal authorities." Marcus's gaze did not waver. "I understand your authority, but I also understand the limits of it. You can enforce rules, but you cannot justify intimidation or harassment. If there is a specific issue that needs to be addressed, let's document it and resolve it together. Threats will not help anyone, and they may create unnecessary conflict." Angela could feel her heart pounding in her chest. She wanted to speak, to defend herself, but she knew Marcus was handling the situation with far more skill than she could. She stepped back slightly, letting him take the lead, and silently thanked him for his calm presence. The enforcers finally muttered among themselves, unsure of how to respond. Rick's face was tight with frustration, but there was a hint of hesitation in his eyes. Marcus's calm demeanor, his thorough knowledge of the rules, and his quiet confidence had created a barrier they could not easily break. After a long, tense pause, the enforcers finally stepped back. "We'll review the situation and report back to the board," Rick said, his tone less sharp than before. They returned to their vehicle and drove away, leaving Marcus and Angela standing in the quiet street. Angela exhaled deeply, relief washing over her. "That was intense," she whispered. Marcus smiled gently. "We handled it calmly, strategically. That's how we stay in control. They may try again, but we are ready." In the days that followed, Marcus took further steps to protect their home and their peace. He documented every interaction, every letter, and every visit from the HOA enforcers. He created a clear record that could be used in case of future disputes. He also spoke discreetly with other neighbors, gathering information about their experiences and building a sense of community awareness. Angela continued to nurture her garden, finding small moments of joy in tending to her flowers. She realized that her garden had become more than just a hobby, it was a symbol of resilience, patience, and determination. Every bloom was a quiet victory, a testament to the couple's ability to maintain their dignity and peace in the face of intimidation. Marcus also began to prepare for the possibility of a formal meeting with the HOA board. He knew that the enforcers might try to escalate the situation further, and he wanted to ensure they were fully prepared. He studied the rules, understood the legal limits of the HOA's authority, and planned a calm, logical presentation that would clearly explain their position. Angela admired Marcus's foresight. He had always been calm under pressure, but now she saw a new level of strategy in his approach. He wasn't just protecting their home, he was creating a plan to ensure that fairness and respect would prevail, no matter what challenges lay ahead. As the week drew to a close, the couple felt a growing sense of determination. They knew that the HOA enforcers might return, and they understood that further challenges were likely. But they also knew that they had the knowledge, patience, and unity to face whatever came next. Angela looked around her garden, taking in the vibrant colors and the careful arrangement of each plant. "I won't give up on this," she said quietly. Marcus nodded, his eyes reflecting both pride and reassurance. "And you don't have to. We face this together. Step by step, calmly and strategically, we'll handle whatever comes our way." By the end of part 4, a sense of quiet strength settled over the couple. Their home remained a sanctuary, their garden a symbol of resilience, and their unity a source of unshakable confidence. The HOA enforcers might try again, but Marcus and Angela were prepared not with anger or aggression, but with patience, intelligence, and unwavering determination. The stage was set for what was to come. The couple had faced intimidation and unfair treatment, and they had responded with calm, thoughtful strategy. The next challenge would test them further, but now they were ready to meet it head-on, armed with clarity, courage, and the strength of their bond. The morning sun filtered gently through the curtains, casting a warm glow across Marcus and Angela's home. For the first time in weeks, there was a sense of calm in the air, though both of them knew that the situation with the HOA had not fully resolved. Today, however, was important. They had been invited to a formal meeting with the HOA board, a chance to address the repeated complaints, defend their actions, and finally set things right. Angela felt a flutter of nerves as she prepared for the meeting. She adjusted her blouse and smoothed down her hair, trying to steady her racing heart. "Marcus," she said softly, "what if they're still hostile? What if they don't listen?" Marcus turned to her with a reassuring smile. "Angela, we've prepared for this. We have all the documentation, we've followed the rules, and we've remained calm. No matter what happens, we handle it with respect and clarity. That's our strength." Angela nodded, drawing courage from his calm demeanor. She had witnessed Marcus in situations where danger or uncertainty could have overwhelmed anyone else, yet he remained composed, thoughtful, and strategic. She knew that today, that strength would guide them both. As they approached the community center where the HOA board held its meetings, Angela noticed several neighbors gathered nearby. Some smiled and waved quietly, showing their support. Others simply observed, curious about how the meeting would unfold. The couple walked in together, heads held high, carrying a sense of quiet confidence. Inside, the room was formal but not intimidating. The board members sat behind a long table, papers neatly stacked before them. At first glance, the members appeared composed, yet Marcus could sense the underlying tension. The repeated confrontations had not gone unnoticed, and the board seemed cautious, aware that this situation had drawn attention. Rick and the other enforcers were also present, sitting slightly apart. Their expressions were sharp, but there was a hint of hesitation. They had faced Marcus in the past and realized that intimidation would not work. Today, they would have to deal with facts, logic, and calm resolve. The meeting began with the board chair calling the session to order. "We are here to discuss complaints regarding property maintenance at 42 Oak Street," the chair stated. "Please present your side." Marcus stepped forward, holding a folder neatly organized with letters, photos, and documentation. He spoke clearly and calmly. "Thank you. We are here to clarify the situation regarding our property. My wife and I have made every effort to comply with all community rules. We have documented every action taken to follow guidelines, including moving plants, adjusting the garden layout, and responding promptly to notices. Angela added softly, our goal has always been to maintain our home beautifully while following the rules. We never intended to cause any conflict or concern. We simply wanted to live peacefully and make our neighborhood a pleasant place. The board members listened, flipping through the documents Marcus had provided. Rick's brow furrowed as he glanced at the photos showing the careful adjustments Angela had made in her garden. It was clear that the couple had gone above and beyond to comply with the rules. Marcus continued, we understand the importance of community standards. We also understand the role of the HOA in maintaining order. However, the repeated threats and visits from the enforcers created unnecessary stress and intimidation. Our hope is to find a resolution that respects both the community standards and the rights of residents to enjoy their homes without fear of harassment. A silence filled the room as the board absorbed his words. There was a sense of respect in the way he presented the facts. Calm, precise, and unwavering, Marcus's approach left little room for misinterpretation. He had not raised his voice, he had not acted aggressively, yet his presence commanded attention. Angela noticed a shift in the room. The board members seemed to reconsider their previous assumptions. They had seen the letters, the repeated visits, and now the careful documentation and clear explanation from Marcus. The weight of fairness was beginning to balance the tension. One of the board members, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, spoke up. It appears that you have made every effort to comply. We also recognize that repeated visits and threats can create undue stress. Thank you for presenting your documentation clearly and calmly. Rick looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat. Marcus met his gaze steadily. There was no anger, no threat, only calm truth. Rick realized that the intimidation tactics had failed and that further aggression would only reflect poorly on him and the HOA. The chair of the board nodded. Given the information presented and the effort shown to comply with community rules, the board will consider this matter resolved. Further complaints or fines will be reviewed carefully to ensure fairness and consistency. It is our responsibility to uphold rules, but also to ensure that residents feel safe and respected. Angela exhaled quietly, relief flooding through her. She looked at Marcus, her eyes shining. He gave her a small nod, a gentle smile that said, "We did it." The meeting concluded, and the couple left the community center together. Outside, the sunlight seemed warmer, the air lighter. Neighbors who had observed from a distance came forward to congratulate them, expressing relief and admiration for how calmly and effectively they had handled the situation. Angela felt a renewed sense of belonging, knowing that their perseverance had not only protected their home but had also inspired others. Back at their house, Angela returned to her garden, gently touching the roses she had tended for weeks. Marcus joined her, moving quietly among the plants. They shared a moment of peaceful companionship, feeling the satisfaction of a challenge met and a threat neutralized. This garden, Angela said softly, it's more than just plants. It's our patience, our perseverance, and our love for this home. It's what we fought for. Marcus nodded, his hand brushing hers as they worked side by side. Exactly. And it shows that calm, thoughtful action can overcome fear and intimidation. We stayed patient, we stayed prepared, and we stayed united. That's what matters. In the weeks that followed, life in the neighborhood slowly returned to normal. The HOA board issued a notice reinforcing the importance of fairness and respectful enforcement of rules. The enforcers became more cautious, aware that residents would stand their ground if treated unfairly. Marcus and Angela's experience became a quiet lesson for the community, showing that courage, patience, and integrity could influence positive change. Angela continued to nurture her garden, now with an even deeper appreciation for its significance. Each bloom was a symbol of resilience and determination. Marcus, quietly observing, felt pride in the way they had handled the situation together. It was not the victory of confrontation, but the triumph of strategy, calmness, and unity. Their bond, already strong, had deepened further through the challenge. They had faced intimidation, stress, and uncertainty, yet they emerged stronger, more confident, and more connected. Their home remained a sanctuary, a place of peace and beauty, reflecting the care and commitment they had invested in it. As the sun set over their neighborhood, casting golden light across the street, Marcus and Angela sat on their porch, hands intertwined. The garden in front of them was in full bloom, a testament to patience, love, and quiet determination. Angela leaned against Marcus's shoulder. "We did it," she whispered. He smiled, looking at the flowers and then at her. "Yes, we did. And no matter what comes next, we know we can handle it together." Calmly, patiently, and with respect. The neighborhood, once tense with conflict and intimidation, had shifted. Respect, fairness, and community understanding began to grow alongside Angela's garden. Marcus and Angela had faced a challenge that tested their patience, resilience, and unity, and they had emerged victorious not through anger or aggression, but through steadfast courage, calm action, and unwavering partnership. In the end, their story became more than just a personal victory. It became a symbol for the neighborhood, that fairness, respect, and patience can overcome intimidation, that calm determination and unity are stronger than fear, and that even small actions, like tending a garden, can become powerful expressions of resilience and hope.